Hey everyone, my name's Alec. This is White Whale Comics, and this is New Comic Book Day Book Club. That's John. And from maybe you could guess from our dance just now, and the title of the episode that I named. This is the positivity episode. Part of the impetus for this was I don't know if any of you guys caught John's show on Saturday Morning Comics, but I made a joke so good that I'm going to repeat it again, which I usually don't do. John's dad was talking about Shazam, and was talking about his superpower and said how he liked how he didn't have to go into a phone booth or anything. He could just say Shazam and turn into Captain Marvel. And I said, yeah, it's like me. I can say dumpster fire and I turn into the anti-joy equation.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I nailed that one.
It's solid.
Yeah, solid work. But then I was like, I am that guy. I don't want to say I'm not that guy. I'm that guy. But I'm also not that guy sometimes. And
I don't think I think it's hilarious as a joke and as like a persona comedy kind of thing. I don't think it's accurate or fair. I think it's a misrepresentation of you and our show, because the truth is what we do is we care, critically, we care a lot about comic and story. And we are hard on books. And sometimes we look back and say yeah, maybe I was a little too hard on that book. I'm still picking up Dead Man Logan. I'm legitimately still reading it. I got one issue left. And I think that review, we were probably a little too hard on that book. In my opinion, I'm enjoying it significantly still. But I seem
to remember being, and go ahead.
I think we're not anti-joy. We're not trying to steal people's joy, even if we do accomplish that goal sometimes. I think instead what we're trying to do is critically look at books and story and let our opinions be very valid and clear.
Yeah. And it's funny you should mention that, because when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that was a pretty good episode. We liked that book. And you're like, oh yeah, we were pretty harsh on that. It's like,
I think we were hard on it. I think you were like, I'm not picking up anymore. I was like, I think I'll do one more. And then Bueller's like, yeah, I'm picking up more. And then 3 issues later, Bueller's like, I'm done with this book. And I'm the only one that was like, yeah, I want more. I want more of this.
But someone in the chat last week mentioned how they thought I didn't like Something That's Killing the Children too.
We were like, it's so funny.
But
we get to the end sometimes, we're like, oh, I'd give this an 8 out of 10. And people are like, holy crap, it sounded like you were giving this a 7.
So to be clear, for me at least, I'm not going to speak for you, John. Comics are very important to me. And more importantly than comics themselves is the medium of comics. And I hold that medium to a very high standard. And I think that we as fans deserve things that are done well and thoughtfully. And I don't think that's too much to ask. So when I am critical of things, it's not because I'm just a jerk. I am, but that's not the only reason.
We're not doing it to be hateful or to throw shade or just be dumping on a book. That's never our goal. We legitimately pick books that we're hopeful will be enjoyable, except when you tried to pick Black Cat and we were all like, this is going to be an absolute crap fest, but we almost want to read it anyways. But for the most part, we're picking books because we're hopeful this writer, this art, this idea could be good.
Right. And so often it's so close. And that's why I pick out things that are I made the joke a few weeks ago about how I'm going to make a show called How Could This Be Better? Or, whatever the other better titles.
Self-improvement.
Yeah. Because certain books, they're just oh, if you just did this. And I've been talking Olwolf says, Alec, you're from Mass, we're all jerks.
Yeah, mass holes.
Yeah. And I've been saying to a couple of people that I'm going to do a recorded video where I read Deceased 2 to give it a second shot. because everyone keeps saying, oh, it gets better, it gets better, it gets better. Here's the thing that I want to make clear before I even go into that video. The problem I had the least thing with of issue 1 was the plot. It was the execution. It was insulting to me. So I'm sure like the plot of issue 2 might be perfectly entertaining, but if it's executed as poorly, I'm still going to hate it.
Right.
So
I hear that.
Get ready for that video because I'll be back to Mr. Negativity.
And for the deceased fans, I will say every single one I've spoken to says issue 3 is when it starts to get good. Because I read issue 2, I bought issue 2, and I thought in some ways issue 2 might have been worse than issue 1. That was me. And that drawing of Lois Lane still fucking haunts me. Just gonna tell you. Wandering lazy eye Lois Lane is still messing with me.
So maybe I'll read 2 and 3. But then that means I have to buy 2 more issues of that book.
Right. If you have the DC app, at some point it'll be on there. Or you wait 6 months and do the show in 6 months.
Yeah, I don't.
I do have people tell me they're going to send me a trade at some point, just make me read it. So maybe I forward you the trade when I'm done.
Yeah, Comics Explained says Deceased is fun.
Do we want to shout out the chat here a little bit? Or
yeah, absolutely. We're getting. I just wanted to preface that whole thing. Old Wolf 65 first in the chat. What's up? Followed closely by DS Comics. This sounds like a horse race. Perry Comics coming in third. Comic Mandate Andy closing in on the outside. TJ, that's Slab Dragon Watson. These would be actually some pretty good. TJ Slab Dragon Watson would be an excellent name for a horse.
yeah.
Barrel Comics says, "What's this about positivity?" Yeah, I know it's a foreign concept on this show.
Out of character for sure.
And Chris Barrett said, "What's this about pizza?" You'll find out if you didn't get the thumbnail already. Who else is here? Some guy named John's Comics with Kids.
I was joking. Bear Island said, where was I? Something is killing the children. Which is the joking line reads we had when Bueller was like, something is killing the children. Like a news journalist. And I thought it was like, something is killing the children.
Long Box Diamonds in the house. Comics Explained, as I shouted out already. What's up, guys?
And Perry Comics, he's commenting that we brought joy to him. He enjoyed Jimmy Olsen because of us.
And Long Box Diving also says Deceased is fun. I'm going to give it a fair shot. I'm going to try to put my preconceived notions of issue 1 aside and read at least the next issue, maybe 2. And but I'll tell you what, if I hate it, it's going to get the hell fury.
We're blaming all of you. We're going to pick nothing but crappy books for the next 6 months.
So next thing I want to bring up, which I haven't mentioned in a couple weeks, especially because apparently comic channels might get demonetized at the beginning of next year because we are all for kids.
It's the name of my channel, so I'm like,
yeah, I know you're in trouble. So 2 things I want to bring up about that. Number 1, because I am likely going to be demonetized. If you want to donate to charities through Super Chats, please don't, and just donate to a charity because I don't want Google getting any of my money.
Gotcha. Because even if they donated now, by the time you got it, it's demonetized. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'll still get it, but like they're being jerks, so gotcha. I don't want them to get a percentage of the money that should be going to charity. So just don't bother super chatting. Just donate money or time or something.
And if you really want to frustrate Alec and also donate to charity, you go back to one of his old auctions where his email for his PayPal is listed, and you just send him the money that you would directly and tell him what charity he has to send it to.
No, they're all going to the same charity. And number 2, I keep joking that what I'm going to do to spite them is only review pornographic comics from now on after the first of the year. So that'll teach them, because then how do they square that one up?
Wang.
Yeah. So I'm going to show lots of wangs under artistic license.
I would say is not out of character already. I'm just going to say. It's been a bit of a theme on the show.
Fair. So we're 10 minutes in. We haven't talked about the book yet.
On schedule.
Yes. Well, it's almost as if it's on your channel and we're just starting.
Burn.
Yeah.
I like how people are here. How many people, like, what do we got? Like 20 people in the chat. They have no clue what book we're talking about.
Well, they might if they knew what the thumbnail is, if they're a savvy fan. So I will say, full disclosure, we did cheat a little bit because I said, hey, I want to do a positive show. And John said, how are we going to make sure we do that? And then we decided, let's just pick a book that we already know we like.
Yeah, so we basically said, like, hey, if we read something great that came out today, maybe we talk about that. It was actually the laziest idea we probably could have come up with.
Well, the problem was that we didn't buy or read a lot of overlapping books on our own this week. So I liked a couple things, and I'm going to talk about one of them, but John didn't buy it.
Yeah, we can highlight some of the stuff that we really liked at the end if you want, just some of the stuff that came out today, because this is definitely more of an episode of Old Comic Book Day book club.
Yes. So, John, you want to show the book? Because I have a big hardcover that I can't pick up. We're reading Pizza Dog, Hawkeye, number 11. The Matt Fraction, David Aja. And
I only bought this like 2 months ago, I think. My LCS was selling issues 1 through 13, and I buy it the whole lot. And I wanted several of the other issues, and this one obviously was one of the sweet ones that was in there that I wanted. And yeah, so this is the issue. I argue that it's something of a standalone issue. At the same time, Alec was reminding me before we went live that there are definitely crossover elements that bleed all the way through.
No turtles or spaceballs.
No.
Comics with Bueller jumped in the chat. What's up? Barrelin says, aha, I knew it. That's a solid joke. Kavi's in the chat. What's up? Yeah, this issue is, I don't want to speak too hyperbolically, but it's like everything I want in a comic.
Go on. What specifically? What do you mean?
Let me talk about this first page here. If I can not knock over everything on my table by picking up this stupid hardcover instead of so lazy. Nope, there it goes. I almost did it. So this first page, it really exemplifies what a comic should be and what the medium can do, right? So it's using text as visuals, which no other medium can really do. It is using iconographic images.
Iconography.
Thank you. I couldn't get that word out. To tell a story. It is using visuals to carry a story as well, because Pizza Dog only understands some words, which I find very funny. So it's like me, help. And it's just like, if you're gonna make a comic, use the strengths of the medium. And that's what this does so well. And that, I don't want to dump on DC's too much because this is a positivity episode, but that's one of the things I hated so much about that, is that it was like, here's what's happening, see what's happening, let me tell you exactly what you're seeing. And it's redundant nonsense. Just write a book or make a movie.
Yeah.
But
and I think the critiques that you might have heard us repeat again and again on this show, as far as use of exposition, use of the visual elements with the story elements, this particular comic doesn't suffer obviously from any of those. If anything, it utilizes all those, right?
Exactly. It takes the strengths of the medium and uses them in a way that is beneficial Like, it doesn't shy away from them. It says, okay, what can we do in this medium that you can't do in other mediums? Okay, let's do that really well.
Right.
And I'm not saying that every comic should be a silent issue or that every comic should use these techniques.
No, but I think it's funny that both when we were saying, like, let's pick an issue of a comic that you and I both love, the suggestion you threw out and one of the suggestions I threw out were both silent issues. Right? Like, I was throwing G.I. Joe's silent issue as my first choice, and then you threw this, and I was like, clearly we're on the same page as far as comics that pushed what comics could do.
Yes. And like, not only is it just stunningly graphically beautiful, like every page, but it is, they create, so like, obviously a dog does not talk.
And doesn't understand what people say.
Right.
Beyond certain words.
And like, you could very easily like have a dog have thought bubbles or narration, have it be anthropomorphized, but instead they use a dog like a dog would think with its nose. And so they have this little icon here where you can see where it's like showing the smells going in. And as he's walking by all the doors, he associates the smells with the people and what he associates with those people. And like, you could, I guess, argue and say, well, that's pointless. It doesn't add anything to the story. But
I would disagree.
These dudes were so fed up with the talkie-talkie of Harleen that they decided to go full silent this week.
I'll say I was frustrated, Adam, with the talkie-talkie of Die this week as well. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh, damn.
It was legit talkie-talkie.
I'm not ready yet.
But I would argue that the iconography you're talking about also, at the beginning, what might seem as like, oh, I don't know if they need this, is setting up a language that the entire issue will then build upon and use in such a functional plot way.
Absolutely. So yes, because if they just used it in the plot points, you would say, well, what the heck does this mean?
Right? You'd be confused by the weird question marks and symbols and things like, what is happening here? But because we see him using it in a way that makes sense, like, oh, that neighbor cooks this kind of food or has this kid or whatever, I can understand that by watching it. And then all of a sudden, when you jump into the actual heart or meat of the story, now when he's using those same icons in different ways, it makes a whole lot more sense.
Dave Enrique dropping some indie knowledge. I love it. Said, waiting to hear how big of a fan of Alec is of Aha's art. You think Aha channels Chris Ware on this run? I'm a fan of both. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in this issue, I wouldn't say like to the extreme Chris Ware does it, but clearly it's influenced by that same style of storytelling. And I don't know if you are familiar with his work, but
I'm not. Actually, I was trying to think. I almost wanted to Google it, but I was like, is that going to be weird? I'm like just typing.
Do you mind vamping for 2 seconds while I go grab a book?
No, go ahead. I don't mind. So, if for those that haven't read, this is the Matt Fraction and Aja drawn storyline of Hawkeye. This is issue 11. So the first trade is My Life as a Weapon, which maybe a bunch of you have read because it's phenomenal. This is the second storyline. This is issues 1 through 5. And I believe the second storyline goes 6 through 12 or 6 through 11. This is issue 11. The story focuses on the dog, the mutt, that Hawkeye's been taking care of, as the dog sort of goes through solving a crime that is brought to his attention by a little puppy in the neighborhood. And there's a murder victim. There are several mysterious people involved. The dog is basing all of his knowledge on the scents and the things it can pick up around the crime scene. So it's a kind of a fun murder mystery from the point of view of the dog.
I should make myself big. So this is Jimmy Corrigan, Smartest Kid on Earth. As you can see, very kind of a similar look and feel to it.
Yeah, almost flat deco kind of style.
Yeah, but he does some crazy stuff. Oh, here he is sitting on the toilet, but you can see like kind of the stuff down here on the other side in the blue, where it's just like kind of weird.
Well, and lots of the same style box and sort of repeating in a pattern to show like change and what's happening in a little over time.
So yeah, it's I think to me, for those of you who are Chris Barrett says there's a puppy involved. Yes. To me, what makes a great comic artist are two things. First thing is style. So if you just like draw really well, I don't especially care. You have to have something that takes you as like creates an individual look. It doesn't have to be. Thanks, Siri.
But yeah, like your own sort of signature in some way.
Certain type of flair, like a certain thing where it's like, oh, you're doing something that's interesting. And the other thing is storytelling, because again, it's
the cinematography of comics.
Yeah, it is a storytelling medium, and if you can't tell a story with your art, like one thing that I hate more than anything. I know this is supposed to be a positivity episode.
I was gonna say there's lots of things you hate more than anything, but okay, go ahead.
Is the panel where it's like there's a page, but there's a huge drawing of a single character that's like overlapping all of the panels. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Okay.
Like it was a big like image thing in the 90s, but like, people still tend to do it. It's useless. It's strictly a like, oh, let me draw a big cool figure. There's no purpose to it. It does not tell a story.
It's kind of like the Deadpool first appearance cover.
Sort of. I wish I could think of an example. Like,
well, I mean, Rob Liefeld seemed to do that kind of thing a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, and I don't feel like you have to strictly stick to a grid. I prefer using a grid. I prefer storytellers that use a grid, but like even like this page, this is still a floating grid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well,
when you just have like nonsense flying all over the place, it doesn't do anything for you except look fancy. And that doesn't.
And I think that artists with boundaries and restrictions can really explore ideas within that framework. And I remember, hearing people, when a filmmaker got, big or popular enough and they had a crap ton of money thrown at them, that their movies would get crappier because they were less focused on ideas and really creating something original. And instead they were just like, sure, let's try this. Sure, let's try that. It was not, they weren't thinking through the process the same way.
Sure. So, when you look at George Lucas.
Well, and then you look at somebody like Spielberg, and when he went to go make Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, his thinking process was, I need to really restrict myself. And he actually put bizarre restrictions on himself making those movies, things he'd never done to himself before, just to make it harder to make those films and to force himself to think about it, because he could spend money like crazy if he wanted to. But the framework and the structure that he forced himself to do, whether it was, oh, I'm going to shoot this whole movie, or the whole battle on the beaches of Normandy with a handheld camera,
right?
That's going to force him creatively into a structure that's going to create power for the audience. And it's the same thing with an artist deciding to use panels in a certain way that will create a response from the reader.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have unlimited resources, of course you're just going to want to use those resources. You're not going to think of things that will solve problems in a way that might be more interesting.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same with a comic artist who's not thinking through his pages and his panels and instead just trying to make everything splash. Because then they're not telling a story. They're not pacing a story so that when the splash page arrives, it's a stunner. I think of, like, I love I'm a Jim Lee fan. I know that he fails sometimes, but I look at that first issue of Hush when it's all those tight panels of Batman and you don't see his face or his body. You just see him breaking in. He's belting and he's thinking. You see his thought bubbles. And that first splash page is this explosion because it's like he's bursting out of the frames now. He's been in the frames. He's been all these things. He's taken out all these bad guys. And all of a sudden, Killer Croc just bursts out of nowhere and attacks him. And we see all of Batman and all of Killer Croc in this splash page. I think the structure that he had set up over several pages is what makes it work.
Great Legend in the House says, if you think these two guys are the professors of the comic book community, give them an amen. I think that's a gross over-exaggeration, but I appreciate the support. So going back to the, his little nose bubbles, as I will call them. So he follows this other pup up to the roof, and they find this guy who's been killed or at least beaten up. And you see this little, diagram of the roof and these three numbers, and I
love that page.
And his association with Pizza Dog's association with what those people are. So he sees the guy who's been beaten up, and then he sees, okay, I can smell Clint, and then I smell someone else I don't recognize, but I know he had a gun because he can probably smell the gunpowder or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, and he had lipstick on, or they had lipstick on. Spoiler alert, the guy. And it's just going back to what you were saying earlier about setting up that language. It like immediately pays off, and you say, okay, now we're telling a story with that language, but it's strictly a visual language. But I think like with that simple setup, anyone can look at this and understand what they're saying.
And I think what makes it even more interesting is that it asks you, the reader, to almost lean in a little bit, right? You can't lean back and just sort of skim read this, especially these early pages when you're getting used to this sort of dog language that Matt Fraction has set for us. I got to that page and I read it through and I was like, I think I understand it, but I had to lean in and go through it again. No, the dog loves pizza. He's called Pizza Dog because he's always running. If he smells pizza, he's running off. He's eating it.
Yeah.
So
and
they
the
call
next page,
it.
he gets a little distracted with the trash and
yeah.
pizza.
And then in the first 10 issues of the comic, he's sort of been this fun side character that Hawkeye has sort of taken in. And then it was like a chance to let him shine and get a little bit of a moment.
Right.
But like that panel where it had the numbers 1, 2, and 3, and you had to kind of look over and see, okay, this person died because they're laying there. This person ran out the window here. And then you go down to the next page where it shows like shooting and jumping out the window. And you're like, okay, the dog is piecing together what happened based on his sense of smell and what it's seeing. And it's really kind of a fun, clever way to do it.
And going back to your point about skimming through this, that is something that is very easy to do with a silent issue of a comic, is to just breeze through and say like, okay, I get it. And I think these creators did a really good job, a really smart way to get you to kind of pause, and pay attention by adding stuff like that, because it's not only a really clever way to tell the story, but it's a clever way to get the reader to get more out of the story and not feel like, well, I spent $3-4 on this and it took me 10 seconds to read.
I mean, there's something about it. I remember listening to people talk about story writing as like the audience wanting two things that are seemingly yin and yang to each other. They want familiarity and originality. And a writer and an artist have to balance that, because obviously I pick up a comic because it seems familiar to something to me, and I want to experience a sensation of reading a story that I remember from before. But at the same time, I don't want to read the same story. I want something original that's going to challenge my preconceptions, right? So an artist has to balance originality with predictability and comfort, what I'm looking for. So I pick up a Hawkeye comic. I want Clint Barton doing his Hawkeye thing, and I want to laugh and enjoy it. But at the same time, I want to be challenged on what I understand as a Hawkeye comic and be pushed in a further direction. So in this particular case, what you get is a comic that I went into expecting one thing the first time I read it and found a whole other layer that was like, how have I not had this in my life before now? Right?
Yeah. I don't know. It just, it is the creativity that, like, I know it's easy to say that everyone should just do, because it's not like, it's just saying like, oh, everyone should be Spielberg. And, I understand that not everyone has that creative powerhouse behind them and that ability, but like, there are creators out there that have this, that publishers are not giving a chance because they like can't draw the Marvel way,
Well, like when Jim Lee was a huge thing and everybody started drawing like 100 extra detail lines on all their stuff, and everybody was trying to do a version of Jim Lee, and not realizing that what made Jim Lee cool was that his stuff looked different than other people's things. Right? He was doing his own thing, and it was kind of fun to be able to pick up, oh, that's a Jim Lee book, and not have to be like, oh, it's the same as everybody else's.
Yeah. Who gives a shit about detail lines?
Well, yeah, and who cares if it doesn't fit the story in some way? Aja's work in this Fraction run of Hawkeye, I've never seen anything like it, and it fits perfectly with this narrative. And that's all that matters. I don't care about anything else, right? It doesn't matter beyond that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, I would never describe his work as simplistic, but it is. He certainly is efficient in his line work.
Yeah, I think it's not overdone, I think is the difference, right? Yeah. It's not Frank Cho going over everything with 1,000 detail lines, make the curtain look like it's real and coming to life. It's definitely not that. But unlike some of those other guys, the pacing here is my favorite part. But I don't think artists get enough credit for good pacing in comic books.
I completely agree. And I think that it's better for being less.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're not really going in order of the story. I know we'll kind of skip around. So for those just joining, this is Fraction and Aja's Hawkeye run, issue 11, which is told from the perspective of Pizza Dog, the sort of mutt that Clint Barton has taken in earlier in the series. And the dog is sort of solving a mystery. I want to jump to a set of panels. Well, there's so many good ones, right? I love, there's a few sections here that really slow down. And I love this one right here.
Yeah.
This is a splash page as far as this storyline goes, but the dog's sitting out front and just thinking about and smelling all the things that mean something. It's almost all food related, but like there's a lot of smell and sound kind of happening here. But this feels slow to me, and the panel right after it is like silent. You have the dogs almost communicating with each other, right, as they go through their day. It's very slow and deliberate. The pacing is very calm, and it builds towards the fight on the roof, which to me it's almost the same format in that it's like a handful of panels, but this flies by.
Yeah, very frantic.
And I'm sorry that I'm like blowing there it is. And then it goes up.
Put your hand behind it like this.
I gotta do the like Thanatos thing?
Yeah, there you go.
For me, like the pacing on something like this is insane, because the same 12 panel setup 2 pages earlier felt very calm and placid. And then I jumped to this page and it's like action packed, explosive. And it's almost like I can't get to the end of these panels fast enough.
But
it's just in the design of the art.
Right, because it is literally the same layout.
Yes, exactly. And we just had it earlier, and it's used throughout. But then on this page, all of a sudden, with the fight on the rooftop, it's just like bam, 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 bam. Like everything happens so quickly. There's gunshots and bites, and the dog's here, and then the dog's there, and these guys are freaking out. And then they're falling off the roof. It's incredible. John is called to Wu-Tang.
And let's not
you guys
discount the color on this page, or on this whole issue. It's basically black, white, yellow, blue.
Minimalist for sure.
Brown, but it just.
And solids, not variations, right? It's like a solid block. And
I think it looks so much nicer than so many comics that have like this crazy looking, like that was one of my problems with Harleen. It's like it looked so digitally painted. Like you could see the shape of the brush.
Yeah.
And like the art was nice in that. I don't want to say like I thought it was terrible, but it just that took away from it for me.
Sure.
I'm not saying everything has to be flat colors, but it's just, I'm sure some editor somewhere along the way said, "Oh, don't you want some gradients in there?" That's how I think editors sound.
And if I can make another movie comparison, I would say it was kind of like when Toy Story came out and all of a sudden everybody wanted digital animation. And the art of hand-drawn animation basically just fell to guys like Hayao Miyazaki, who wanted to keep pushing that medium and making something special, panel by panel, like frame by frame. And it's kind of the same, pendulum swing in comics, where now almost everybody wants to do digital art and digital coloring. They start with a pencil sketch, they load it in the computer, and then it's all computerized. I think it's hard to get back to that place. I mean, you talk about Disney putting out a hand-drawn animation movie, and it's like revolutionary that anybody wants to do that anymore. And it kind of feels like the same in comics these days.
Great legend. I do not have Twitter.
I do, buddy. I'll send you the legend. I'll send it to you on Instagram.
But I will also say that I don't have a problem with digital art. I have a problem with digital art that doesn't utilize digital for the strengths that it has. You don't have to. You can make a custom brush. You can buy custom brushes. You can, use multiple brushes to get an effect. You don't have to use the standard brush that looks like has a little round edge and a little point at the other end where you can see like, oh, that's a digital stroke every single time. So, use your medium for its strengths. Like if you're going to do watercolor, make it look like watercolor. Don't try to make it look like this,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that the coloring style here adds a fun noir element for me.
Yeah. Again, like everything about this, every decision that they made with this issue specifically is spot on. I would not say, I really don't have like a criticism about it. Like the way it's drawn, the way it's written, the way it's conceived, the language they've used with it, the coloring, the story itself.
And as much as the story is like a dog solving a murder, there's still a significant Hawkeye storyline playing out simultaneously, which for me is the like saving grace of the issue. Because if I were a big Hawkeye fan and I just picked up this one issue and it didn't have all the Clint Barton elements to bookend it, I might be frustrated.
Sure, especially like, that's, one of my complaints. We've talked a lot about Battlestar Galactica in a couple of the episodes where it's like the boxing episode specifically.
You're that boxing episode.
The boxing episode drives me nuts. Not because of the episode itself. Like it's a fine episode. It's important for the characters. I get it. But where it landed in the season was so aggravating.
Yeah.
Because it was like right in the middle of all the heat, all the action of the last few episodes. And it's like, oh, we want to talk about these characters and their relationship together. And like, yeah, okay, fine. It's important. But geez, come on. Like, I want to know what's happening in the plot right now. So similarly, this very easily could have fallen into that trap of like, okay, we have all this stuff going on with these other characters. Now you're going to tell a story about a dog like eating pizza. Who cares? but
yeah, but
you do care.
Because I think it has those moments at the end specifically, but it's set up all through it where you get to see what's going on between Clint and Kate, right? Barton and Bishop are going through I don't want to say a breakup, but certainly a parting of the ways. And, and the dog is almost a bargaining chip in the last few pages. It's this great, like, she's like, I'm taking the dog with me.
Yeah.
And she calls the dog runs out, and even Clint is like,
what?
Clint's like, hey, you're taking my dog. What's going on? And there's that great center panel right above my finger there where you see her outside and she's leaving and he's upset. And then she just calls the dog and the dog's off with it.
Yeah.
And then the final is that yellowy, she's going to California and the dog's riding in the car realizing I'm not going to be seeing Clint Barton anytime soon.
Yeah. Dave Enrique said, do you think Fraction had input on the layouts or he let just Epsiode do his magic? So that's a great question.
Great question.
I know that the typical way a writer scripts a comic is by putting, like, film scripts have a very specific way you write it. Like, it's like a style guide. And similarly for comics, there's a way to write a comic script. And that way is to say, page 1, the number of panels there are, and then go by, say, panel 1, here's who says what. Panel 2, here's who says what. So if he wrote it as a normal comic script, I would say there was at least some input, but judging from how bonkers this issue is, I would say I would have to assume it was a full collaboration.
And I would imagine that the best writer-artist combos have that discussion. That when Stephanie Hans and Kieran Gillian are writing Die, there's a lot of discussion there. That there's a lot of back and forth with those kinds of creators and writers. And this feels like an example of that, where clearly these two people are in sync in many ways, and clearly there's discussion and debate going on there.
Chris Barrett said, "There's a normal way and there's a far superior Marvel way." I'm pretty sure Marvel still does it that way, but I could be.
Oh my god, that's too funny.
So yeah, just. I don't know. Make better comics.
And I will say this: if you're tuning in and you've never read the Fraction Asia story, just do yourself a favor. Grab this trade. It's not, what is it? It's $15, $16, but it's been out for a while. You can probably find it on Half Price Trades or eBay for almost half that, if that. It's a great read, and you'll be highly entertained. I will say I even bought the first 12 issues for a less than cover price as a whole lot. So
yeah, you got lucky for that. Is the first issue, and issue 2 now has started going up. But
and I saw that he was selling them, but even beyond just great story, like some of these, you could just say, well, I bought it for this amazing cover work that looks like old 70s movie posters. I have 2 copies of this cover because I freaking love this book. Hilarious.
Yeah, I got a couple of second prints recently.
Oh my god, it's just so good. The covers are phenomenal. The artwork inside obviously is amazing. I think I need a first print of issue 1, and that's about all I need.
Can't help you with that. I'm sorry.
No. But hey, Baltimore's coming.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a masterclass in especially superhero comics. Like I won't necessarily group it in with other things that I might say are like the real creme de la creme of what comics can be. But like it's close. It's real close. It's like, but as far as the last 10 years, I can't think of a superhero comic that I pulled up to this.
Can I make an artistic comparison to an older book? For me, it reminds me of Year One Mazzucchelli.
Sure.
The style,
definitely.
definitely has that ringtone to me, but the tone of the writing could not be more different as far as this Playboy versus that Playboy. I really enjoyed the way Fraction played with this Hawkeye because, and I was talking to Alec before we went live, I can't imagine this working in the MCU because of the MCU version being so dramatically different from this Playboy version. But at the same time, I would desperately hope that one day they could find their way to telling the story because it would be killer.
Yeah. TJ says, FYI, bad comics is nothing new. Yeah. Definitely not. I mean, I remember reading some real turds as a youngster, and even then being like, "Man, no, this is a turd." You know, I'm 12. Like, I just want to read a comic. So, like, I think everything's good. But my problem is not with lack of talent. Like, I can't fault someone for having less talent than someone else because, again, not everyone is going to be someone who's like a top tier writer or artist. That's just not how things work.
Right.
But my problem is like complacency and laziness and not willing to push yourself to do things that are interesting.
Yeah, and not willing to try something, instead just follow the status quo. Do the same. Hey, every issue ends with a villain reveal. I got to do the villain reveal.
Yeah.
Well, try something. What if you did the villain reveal on page 2 and then just see what happens? Shake it up, buddy.
Or do a villain reveal in issue 3 and actually set up some character work. Because no one's going to buy issue 2, they think.
Oh my God. Yeah, the issue 1, issue 2 thing. That bugs.
Yeah.
Chris Barrett had a couple of cool comments. He's saying Daredevil is a playboy. Clint is not a playboy. I could see both of those being playboys in one way or another. I don't know that it's one way or the other. And yes, he also said, "Is Kate Bishop a young kid or an adult?" She's a 20-something. She seems, yeah.
Because
so she's older. This is what I think it was in 2012. I think is when this runs.
Spoiler alert, they have a little bit of a romance. Well, implied. After the first of the year, though, I'm doing my slash fic about Kate Bishop, and I'm not really. Jokes on jokes.
Fire.
Demonetizing jokes. So we don't really have a debate topic this week. I did joke to John that what we should do this week, after I said we should do a positivity week, is do a full debate episode about why we had such a hard time picking a book this week, even though there were a ton of number ones coming out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you actually want to talk about that for a minute, or if you just want to shout out some books that you read.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why this show is it seems so negative sometimes is because of the, I don't know, Yahtzee element involved here, right? We're literally rolling dice, and who knows? Even when we pick a writer or an artist that we're like, yeah, they're consistent, they're good, you legitimately don't know. And we're basing it on a little bit of a scrawl that somebody in the ad department wrote and a cover that probably has nothing to do with what's inside of the book. And you just don't know. And I think that's why we get a lot of negative reviews from our side, because we're just hoping. But, I've heard the phrase, you can hope in one hand and crap in the other and see which one fills up first. And we tend to find a lot of crap. Chris
Barrett said no actual pizza. There's some actual pizza for you.
There is. Yeah, the dog is frequently thinking about or seeking out
eating pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's a crapshoot. So, but we also, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we have high demands of what we're going to let pass. I'm not going to. I didn't say anything bad about this. What did I say? Or do you mean typically? Typically, yes. I'm not going to let things that I think
could have been better. Yeah.
Could have been better. Like someone along there. There's so many.
You just keep reading Chris Barrett.
So there are so many fingers in the pot of a comic book, especially a professional comic book. At the very least, you have the
Looking at
writer,
Marvel or DC, yeah.
you have editors, you have the publisher. Someone along the way should say, hey, I feel this way. The thing drives me more crazy than anything. I don't watch TV that much anymore, so it doesn't bother me so much. But advertisements. I will watch an advertisement and say, who let this pass? Like, there's something just like, why didn't you do this? It would have been so much better. How could someone not have said that along the way somewhere? Or movies too. Like, it's just like, who is seeing this and saying, oh yeah, that's the best version of this? Or is it just like, who cares? It's shot. Just go with it.
Well, and back to the movie analogy, in some ways, when you have artists at a certain caliber or working at a certain level, there are more fingers in the pie, and yet also fewer people to say, no, that's a bad idea, right? I think people like, Scorsese or Allen or Spielberg or whatever, these big directors who've been around a long time, nobody's going to say Woody. Nobody's going to say no to Woody Allen. Nobody's going to be like, no, you shouldn't do that in your movie, right? Nobody's going to say no to Scorsese. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that part. So instead, he's got to be able to say it to himself, or nobody's going to say it, right? And it's the same with a Snyder or Capullo. It's the same with a Jim Lee or whomever. If they're at a certain level, there's not going to be a lot of people telling them no. They have to be a good barometer for themselves, or have surrounded themselves with people that give them that no from time to time that says, you can do that panel better. You can do this plot line better.
Yeah. I mean, the only half the time I see the evidence of an editor in a comic, it's the little asterisk that says, see this other book so we can take more money of yours. It's not like, oh, that looks like something maybe that, like, of course, you're not going to see the editor's work if the book's really good, because, if they changed anything, that's for the best and you don't know what was worse. But if you see mistakes, an editor should catch that.
Yep.
And say, do this better.
And I think an effective writer-artist partnership push each other to be better and don't let stuff just slide.
Sure.
I know that people are mentioning Snyder and Capullo and in the chat. And I feel like it seems to me that there's not enough strong editing at a certain level. And instead, it's just either letting it happen or forcing people to follow a dogma. This video makes Bueller feel happy.
Thanks, Bueller.
Because we're talking positivity, or because at the end we're swinging back to negativity again,
or just because we're speaking the truth. I hope it makes you feel at least better than the G.I. Joe video. Don't bring that up.
It's floating around over there somewhere.
Yeah, I think just make good comics. That's all I want. Speaking of good comics.
Yeah, so we're going to end with some of the books we picked up this week that we liked, that we had a chance to read, and we really enjoyed.
I'm only going to shout out one because it was head and shoulders for me above anything else I read this week.
So I'll share two then, because if I'm whittling it down, I'll go to just two.
Go ahead. So you go first, I'll go middle, and you go last.
It's got to be House of X. I'm sad that there's only one more issue left, but I'm also looking forward to this ending and ending well. And the trial of Sabretooth is pretty awesome, I gotta say. And the finale of that part of the story is too cool.
For me, it was a book that it is a number one. It was something I was very excited about. I didn't suggest it for this week because I didn't know how available it was going to be or how interested anyone else would be in reading it. It's from Boom Studios. It's called Strange Skies Over East Berlin.
I saw it. People were talking about it in their preview videos, and I was thinking about it, and I looked at it on the shelf, but I didn't actually pick it up and read.
I am going to say this hesitantly because of how much I love this other book I'm about to mention. But I have not enjoyed a first issue as much as I like this since Little Bird. Yeah. It was such a banger out of the gate. I cannot wait to see where this goes. So
who are the people involved? Because I don't remember feeling like I knew either one.
Jeff Loveness and Lisandro Esterin and Patricio Del Peche.
Yeah, those guys.
Basically, it is about Cold War East and West Berlin and spy stuff and possibly aliens. So that's the short elevator pitch for it. But really, really, really well told.
And then shocker, my other book.
Old Man Quirrell.
Boom. You know it is. I'm going to make Alec read the trade, or probably be 2 trades for it by then.
Yeah, I'm not opposed. I mean, you love it so much that I if it's a stinker, I'm gonna storm off of this show. Which brings us to next week, which will be on John's channel.
And we got to read the biggest event finale of the year for me, even bigger than War of the Realms at this point, just because of how good it's been. We are doing Powers of X 10, that one too. Number 6, the finale to the whole Powers and House storyline. And we're going to have Matt, the boy who had 7, join us. And we're going to just we're going to look at the issue, but I think we're going to probably spend a little time looking at the whole saga and what it means for mutants going forward at Marvel.
Yeah. So if you have not read it yet or are not going to be reading it, definitely do not tune in or watch the replay later because we are going to be spoiling the ish out of it.
But if you haven't read it and you're curious about it, it might be the chance to tune in and get a little bit of knowledge of what it's about. And it might motivate you to either completely skip it or go back and get that trade when they drop it.
Most definitely. Bueller, I did pick up Dead Eyes. I have not read it yet, though.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be a reprint or at least a discussion of the Dead Rabbit stuff, or if it was just going to start a whole new storyline and just continue on. Yeah. So I was like, I didn't know where I was on the fence, how I felt about it overall.
So yeah, that's all we got, I think, this week, right?
Yep.
You got anything you want to plug?
It's a pretty light week for me this week, so I don't think I have anything else going on this week. I'm trying to take a little more time now that the school year is going to, spend time with the kids, the wife, do some actual work I get paid for, and then I'm trying to sell some more books so that I'm ready for Baltimore. So that's my next 2 weeks. I don't know that I have any big shows going on besides my Wednesday stuff and the Saturday stuff with the girls.
Yeah, I apologize for once again being absent from Monday's show on Comic Core. I had really, really bad food poisoning. But as you can see, I'm upright again. And so hopefully next Monday we'll be back reading more 90s books. And then we'll be back on John's channel next week for this. I don't have anything planned or scheduled yet.
And we're going to be in Baltimore before you know it. We can do a show live together.
Not on Wednesday, but we can do something.
No, we'll just sit in the Comic Core booth at a blank hour and just do a show about, I don't know, nothing. We'll do a Seinfeld Comic Core show.
We'll just do like patty cake. Just because we can.
We can do this, but point the right direction or still do it the wrong direction in real life.
Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this positive episode. I mean, this is about as positive as we get, right?
Yeah, there's no other layer. There's no higher layer than this. Hey, Chris, if you want to know, I'll send you some pictures of what I'm still trying to sell on Instagram. So hit me up on Instagram. I'll send you some photos.
But thanks everyone for hanging out. Thank you, John, for putting up with my crazy idea.
You kidding me? I'm right there, brother. Right there with you.
No, I count on you. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great night, everyone. Bye. I always say bye too early because StreamYard takes like next
on the ocean.
Don't. Oh yeah, never turn your back to the ocean.
Bad.